The twin suns of Viralia Prime dipped low in the sky, painting the capital city in shades of gold and crimson. The grand towers of Zilara's palace shimmered with alien architecture, intricate spires curving like the wings of some immense cosmic bird. On the balcony overlooking the city, Queen Zilara stood with her regal composure, her eyes reflecting a mix of pride and curiosity. Her attention was drawn not to the palace below, nor to the approaching night sky, but to the man standing beside her. He was human, Ethan Cade, a diplomat from a distant planet called Earth. To the Queen, he seemed ordinary. His frame was unremarkable, his attire simple by alien standards, and his demeanor quiet. Yet there was a calm confidence about him, a subtle patience that made her wonder at times if humans were more complex than they appeared. Zilara had married him in secret, partly as a political maneuver and partly out of curiosity. She had expected him to be charming, clever, or at least entertaining. But so far, he had been quietly adaptable. He had mastered the basic customs of the Virelian court, not with flair, but with a careful respect that alien courtiers often overlooked. "I do not understand humans fully," the Queen murmured, her voice low, almost lost in the wind. "They are so ordinary, yet they have a strange resilience. This one," she glanced at Ethan, "does not seem extraordinary at all. Yet I am curious." Ethan gave a small nod. "I try to respect your ways, Your Majesty. I want to learn. That is all." His voice was steady, calm. It carried no arrogance, no pretense. Zilara raised an eyebrow. "Learning is one thing. Surviving the Shadow Nebula Armada is another." She spoke of the threat looming beyond the star systems, an enemy whose shadow had spread fear across Viralia Prime and neighboring colonies. The Nebula Armada was ruthless, skilled in strategies that most civilizations could not match. Entire planets had fallen before them, reduced to silence and ash. Even her empire, vast and powerful, had felt the pressure of their advance. Ethan, of course, said nothing about his own capabilities. The Queen had yet to see the depth of his knowledge. He did not boast. He did not display powers beyond human limits. And that was precisely what made him so intriguing. The court inside the palace buzzed with whispers. Alien generals and advisors exchanged looks that mixed amusement with doubt. The human diplomat, they said among themselves, was insignificant. He was fragile, soft-spoken, and too polite for the harsh realities of galactic politics. None of them noticed the subtle intelligence in his eyes, the way he observed patterns, considered probabilities, and processed complex systems effortlessly. As night fell, Ethan was led through the palace corridors to his quarters. The halls were lined with alien art, symbols that shifted color depending on the viewer's emotional state. To Ethan, it was mesmerizing but not distracting. He paid attention to the small details, the way guards moved, the placement of communication panels, the defensive mechanisms hidden in plain sight. Every element of the palace was designed to impress and intimidate, but he saw the patterns behind it. That evening, Zilara summoned Ethan to dine with her privately. The hall was enormous, stretching as if the stars themselves had been captured within its walls. At the center, a table floated mid-air, glowing softly with bioluminescent lights. The Queen sat at its head, her posture elegant and commanding. Ethan approached and bowed respectfully. "Human," she began, her tone playful yet edged with authority. "You have been among us for some cycles now. Tell me, do you find our customs puzzling?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Some customs are different, but not puzzling. They follow logic in their own way. I am learning." Zilara leaned back, intrigued. "You learn quickly. I expected you to falter." She paused, letting her words linger. "I assumed humans were fragile, small, weak, unprepared for galactic politics. And yet, you endure." Ethan's calm gaze met hers. Endurance is part of survival, Your Majesty. Survival is part of life. The Queen studied him carefully. There was no false humility, no desperate attempt to impress. And yet, beneath the calm exterior, she sensed a hidden strength. Not the kind of strength measured in fleets or weapons, but a quiet force, intelligence, adaptability, courage. Traits she had rarely seen among alien diplomats, most of whom relied on intimidation and technological superiority. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden alert from the palace sensors. The Shadow Nebula scouts had been detected on the outskirts of the system. The Queen's lips tightened. War was approaching. Ethan, observing her reaction, remained composed. He had no fear, though he understood the gravity of the situation. To him, intelligence and preparation could balance the odds, even against enemies that seemed unbeatable. The next morning, Zilara convened a council of war. Her generals and advisors filled the hall, their exosuits gleaming, their voices tense. They debated strategies, each more complex than the last. Bombardment patterns, fleet formations, planetary shields, they argued as if only brute force could prevail. Ethan listened quietly, taking notes, asking subtle questions. When a lull came, he suggested a minor adjustment to the shield frequency. A simple change, using principles the aliens did not fully understand. One of the advisors scoffed. "Human, you cannot comprehend the complexity of Virelia's defenses. Leave the strategy to those who have mastered it." Ethan's response was calm. "Perhaps, but the principle is sound. A small adjustment could increase efficiency and prevent shield overload. It is worth considering." Zilara noticed the reactions of her court. Many were irritated, even insulted, by a human daring to offer advice. Yet she remained silent, intrigued. She had not yet realized that Ethan's mind was not ordinary. It was not just logic. It was creativity applied to survival, a trait aliens often overlooked. Over the next few cycles, Ethan's presence in the council became subtle, but undeniable. Small victories followed his suggestions. Shields held where they might have failed. Defensive systems optimized under his guidance. Slowly, alien officers who had mocked him began to reconsider. Whispers circulated. Perhaps the human has more insight than we expected. Outside the palace, the first signs of the Nebula Armada appeared, dark silhouettes against the stars, massive vessels that dwarfed anything Virelia had deployed in recent cycles. Zilara's heart tightened. The Queen had faced many battles, yet the looming shadow of this enemy carried a weight she had not felt before. Ethan, observing the fleet through the palace observation deck, said nothing. But his eyes scanned each vessel, noting angles, energy outputs, and probable weak points. To the untrained eye, he appeared contemplative, almost casual. But Zilara, for the first time, felt a flicker of unease, mixed with fascination. "Do you not fear them?" she asked quietly, leaning beside him. "I assess them," Ethan replied simply. "Fear does not help. Knowledge does." The Queen studied him. His calmness was unnerving. He did not tremble, did not panic, did not underestimate. And yet, she sensed that this human was hiding far more than he revealed. Perhaps, she thought, she had misjudged him. That night, she walked alone through the palace gardens, letting the twin moon's light wash over her. Statues of ancient Virelian heroes stood among alien flora, their eyes seeming to watch over her. The threat of war weighed heavily, yet her thoughts kept returning to Ethan. He was different, strong in ways she had not anticipated. Perhaps the humans, so often dismissed, had capacities she had only glimpsed. Meanwhile, Ethan quietly coordinated with select engineers and soldiers, not seeking attention. He studied the approaching armada, ran simulations using human logic and probability, and found solutions where alien minds had hit dead ends. Small defenses, clever maneuvers, and improvisations prepared ViewRship for what was coming. The aliens still saw him as fragile, yet each day Ethan quietly disproved their assumptions. His calm intelligence became a thread weaving through the palace, subtle but unbreakable. By the end of the cycle, the Queen realized something extraordinary. The human she had assumed was ordinary might in fact be extraordinary, but not in ways her kind understood. Strength, courage, intelligence, these were measured differently among humans. And perhaps, she thought with a mixture of anticipation and caution, Ethan's true might had yet to reveal itself. As the twin suns rose again, casting light over the city, Zilara knew that the coming war would not just test her empire. It would test her assumptions about humanity itself and about the man she had married in curiosity, now central to the survival of her world. In the quiet corridors of the palace, human and alien minds prepared, each in their own way, for the challenges ahead. And though the Shadow Nebula Armada loomed like a storm on the horizon, one fact became clear. Ethan Cade was no ordinary human, and ViewRship had only begun to understand the power hidden within humanity. The first whispers of battle came on the third cycle after the human diplomat, Ethan Cade, had quietly begun observing the Varelian defense systems. The Shadow Nebula Armada had started its initial raids on the outer colonies, testing the Empire's readiness. To the alien generals, these skirmishes were nothing but minor irritations. To Ethan, they were opportunities to understand the enemy and to prepare. From the observation deck of the palace, Zilara watched the distant flashes of energy in the dark reaches of space. Ships of strange, shifting shapes moved with deadly precision, attacking remote colonies with sudden, calculated strikes. The reports from scouts were grave. Civilian casualties, colony shields breached, and fleets struggling to respond effectively. "Ethan," the Queen said, her voice taut with worry, "these attacks are faster than expected. Do you think our defenses will hold?" He studied the holographic map floating between them, analyzing the paths of enemy ships, their attack patterns, and energy outputs. "The initial attacks are probing maneuvers," he said calmly. "They are testing weak points. If we respond carefully, we can predict their next moves, and we can reduce damage." Zilara raised an eyebrow. "Carefully? Our generals are already scrambling fleets. Are you suggesting you have a better plan than them?" Ethan shook his head. "Not better, different. Sometimes a small adjustment in strategy can have a larger effect than overwhelming force. I can help." The Queen studied him. She had married this human partly out of curiosity and partly for diplomacy, never expecting him to become integral to her empire's survival. And yet, here he was, offering solutions where even her most decorated generals were struggling. Later that day, Ethan met with a small group of engineers and tacticians in the palace war room. He did not seek attention or authority. He simply explained his ideas using simple logic and analogies that even the alien engineers could understand. "We need to adjust shield frequencies," he said, pointing to a holographic representation of a colony under attack. "If we stagger the pulses slightly, we can prevent energy overloads. It is simple, but it will protect more lives. Additionally, repositioning the defense drones in a circular pattern rather than a straight line will make it harder for the enemy to predict our defense." One of the engineers frowned. "Human, your suggestions are unorthodox. Our standard calculations show they are unnecessary. We can handle this with raw firepower." Ethan's voice remained calm. "Raw firepower is effective only if the enemy fails to adapt. These ships are fast and intelligent. Subtle adjustments and unpredictability will protect more colonies and conserve resources. Try it." To their surprise, the adjustments worked. The first wave of enemy attacks against a small colony was deflected with minimal damage. Shields held, drones adapted to unexpected maneuvers, and the alien officers who had dismissed Ethan's ideas could not hide their astonishment. Word of the humans' brilliance spread quickly through the court. Some generals whispered in disbelief. "It is only luck," they said. "A human cannot comprehend interstellar warfare at this level." Others remained cautious, reluctant to admit that the humans' subtle brilliance had saved lives. Zilara, however, noticed something deeper. Ethan was not merely lucky. He anticipated the enemy's movements, thought several steps ahead, and found solutions where the alien methods had failed. There was a pattern of ingenuity that even the Queen could not ignore. The next skirmish occurred near the asteroid belt of Theryx Prime, a strategic location on the edge of the Empire. The Shadow Nebula Armada sent a small fleet to test defenses there. Ethan suggested a layered defense strategy, combining human tactical principles with existing alien technology. He placed decoy drones to mislead enemy sensors, rerouted energy to shields and pulse intervals, and coordinated interceptor ships in unexpected formations. When the enemy fleet arrived, the decoys caused confusion, and the staggered shields absorbed energy bursts efficiently. The enemy ships, expecting a traditional frontal defense, were forced into retreat after sustaining significant damage. The Varelian soldiers watched in awe as what appeared to be a minor adjustment by the human had outmaneuvered the skilled invaders. Zilara could hardly contain her amazement. She had assumed humans were physically weaker and technologically inferior. She had assumed that humans relied on simple tools and brute determination. Yet Ethan's methods were brilliant in a subtle way, exploiting intelligence, creativity, and adaptability, qualities the aliens often overlooked. That evening, Zilara invited Ethan to the balcony once more. The city lights shimmered below, reflecting on her eyes that were wide with newfound respect. "Human," she said quietly, "you have changed the way I see this war, and perhaps the way I see your species. I assumed you were fragile, limited, ordinary, but today you were anything but ordinary." Ethan's response was understated. "I do what I can with what I have. That is all." The Queen studied him. Realizing that he was not seeking recognition, this humility, combined with skill, made him even more remarkable. Zilara had seen thousands of diplomats, warriors, and advisors. Many were brilliant, but all sought attention or glory. Ethan sought only results. Over the next few cycles, the Shadow Nebula Armada continued their minor raids, testing various sectors of the Empire. Each time, Ethan's strategies minimized damage. His solutions were not flashy. They were efficient, practical, and unexpected. Alien officers who had doubted him could no longer ignore his influence. The phrase, "the human may be worth watching," began circulating through the Empire's military ranks. Ethan also took the time to learn from the aliens. He asked questions about their weapons, technology, and cultural tactics. This made him even more effective. By understanding both human principles and alien methods, he could combine them in ways that neither species had considered. One afternoon, while analyzing recent skirmishes in the palace library, Ethan uncovered a pattern. The Shadow Nebula fleet always attacked colonies in triangular formations, leaving a predictable gap in coverage. Using this insight, he proposed a counter-triangle formation for Varelian fleets, positioning smaller human-led ships in unexpected angles to intercept. The plan worked flawlessly. Zilara, watching the battle unfold via holomap, felt a surge of admiration and a hint of disbelief. She realized she had underestimated humans entirely. Strength was not only measured in physical power or the size of a fleet. Intelligence, adaptability, and courage under pressure could achieve far more than she had anticipated. The Queen began to reflect on her assumptions. She had always believed her empire's survival depended on the superior might of Varelian technology and strategy. Humans, she thought, were a minor species, more fragile than insects. But Ethan had proven otherwise. And if one human could do so much, what was humanity truly capable of? Meanwhile, Ethan quietly inspired those around him. Young soldiers began asking his advice, and engineers followed his methods for creating more efficient defenses. His influence spread like a quiet wave, not through force or command, but through example and effectiveness. Zilara noticed how her court was changing. Alien generals who had once mocked Ethan now nodded in cautious respect when he spoke. Some still doubted his limits, but many could not deny the results. The Queen found herself observing him closely, not out of suspicion, but curiosity. What else could this human accomplish? The next major attack came when the Shadow Nebula Armada targeted Virelia Prime itself. Ethan immediately requested access to key defense systems. He moved quickly, analyzing energy flows, shield capacities, and fleet positions. With small but precise adjustments, he optimized the planet's defenses. When the enemy fleet struck, the human's subtle brilliance became unmistakable. Shields pulsed at precise intervals. Interceptors moved in patterns that confused enemy targeting, and decoys diverted key weapons. Losses were minimal, and the enemy retreated, frustrated and surprised. The alien court could no longer dismiss Ethan as insignificant. He had not only saved lives, but demonstrated a strategic mind that rivaled the greatest of Virelian generals. Zilara watched him quietly, her respect growing into admiration, tinged with awe. That night, the Queen visited him privately. The stars sparkled over the palace gardens, casting gentle light on the alien flora. She approached Ethan, her expression serious yet soft. "You continue to surprise me," she said. "I assumed you were ordinary. I assumed your species was limited. Yet you have shown courage, insight, and ingenuity beyond what I imagined. How do you do this?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I observe. I adapt. I try to find solutions that work. That is all humans do. We survive. We endure. Sometimes endurance and intelligence matter more than sheer strength." Zilara nodded slowly. "Perhaps I have underestimated humanity, and underestimated you." The human's calm gaze met hers. "Perhaps you have." As the night deepened, Zilara realized something profound: the survival of her empire, the defense of her people, and even the unfolding of galactic history could depend on this human she had once considered fragile. And if humanity's strength was hidden behind quiet minds and careful strategies, the galaxy had yet to see its true might. In the coming cycles, the Shadow Nebula Armada would escalate their attacks. But now, thanks to Ethan Cade, the Empire had a new weapon. Not a weapon of destruction, but a weapon of subtle brilliance, human ingenuity, and fearless strategy. The Queen understood that the war would test not only technology and courage, but the underestimated potential of humanity itself. And for the first time, she no longer assumed her husband was just a human. The skies above Virelia Prime had grown darker in the past cycles. The Shadow Nebula Armada had escalated their attacks, moving beyond probes and minor raids. Entire fleets now descended upon the Empire's borders, testing not only military might, but the patience and resolve of its leaders. The alien generals had grown restless, their confidence shaken by the unexpected successes of a single human strategist, Ethan Cade. From the observation deck of the palace, Queen Zilara watched the enemy forces assemble, her fingers tapping lightly against the railing. For the first time, she felt a mixture of apprehension and anticipation. This war would not only test her empire, it would test the humans she had long underestimated, especially the one who had become her husband. "Are you ready?" she asked, turning to Ethan, who stood beside her with the same calm expression he always carried. "I am," he said simply. "The enemy's patterns are predictable. Their formation is strong, but their strategy is limited. We can counter them if we act quickly and efficiently." Zilara's gaze narrowed. Limited. They have destroyed worlds before. Your confidence borders on arrogance. Ethan shook his head. It is not arrogance. It is observation. They rely on overwhelming force. We rely on strategy, adaptation, and creativity. Strength is more than firepower. It is knowing how to use what we have. The Queen studied him, noting the quiet conviction in his eyes. She had begun to understand that his mind worked differently from any alien she had encountered. While the Virelians often relied on structured hierarchies and rigid tactics, Ethan's approach was flexible, intuitive, and unpredictable, qualities the enemy had not accounted for. As the enemy fleet approached, Ethan activated the defense protocols he had spent cycles refining. Shields pulsed in staggered intervals, energy was redirected to key defense nodes, and interceptor ships were positioned in irregular patterns designed to confuse enemy targeting systems. Decoy drones scattered in precise formations, drawing fire away from vital areas. The first wave of the Armada hit the planet's defenses. Blasts of energy surged against shields, but the staggered pulses held firm. Interceptors darted unpredictably, intercepting missiles and disrupting attack formations. The enemy's weapons struck decoys repeatedly, wasting precious resources and energy. Zilara observed the battle with a mixture of awe and disbelief. What appeared to be small, simple adjustments by the human were having an extraordinary effect. Entire squadrons of enemy ships faltered, their coordinated attacks unraveling before they could reach the city. Her advisors and generals, who had once dismissed Ethan, now whispered in shock. The human, he predicted their moves, one said. How is this possible? Ethan's focus never wavered. He moved through the palace communications hub, coordinating with fleet commanders and engineers, issuing precise instructions. Adjust shield frequency by 0.3, he said calmly. Interceptor Alpha, circle left and hold position. Drone Squadron 2, simulate breach in Sector 4. Each command was executed flawlessly. Each adjustment amplified the defense's effectiveness. The enemy fleet, accustomed to overwhelming their opponents with sheer numbers, now faced confusion, frustration, and mounting losses. For the first time, Zilara began to see the true might of humanity, not measured in physical strength or size, but in ingenuity, adaptability, and courage under pressure. Ethan's calm decisiveness contrasted sharply with the panic and rigidity displayed by alien officers. She realized that humans possessed a kind of strength the galaxy had underestimated, the ability to think creatively in the face of impossible odds. Hours passed. The battle intensified as the Shadow Nebula Armada unleashed their elite strike force, massive vessels bristling with energy weapons and advanced technology. Zilara's fleets were outnumbered, yet under Ethan's guidance, they held ground. Your Majesty, Ethan said, studying a holographic projection of the enemy formation. We can exploit a structural weakness. Their main assault ships are heavily armored in front but vulnerable at the rear. If we can divert their attention with decoys, our interceptors can strike precisely at these points. It will slow their advance and give us a tactical advantage. The Queen nodded. Do it. Ethan's strategy unfolded like clockwork. Decoys drew the enemy forward, while carefully timed interceptor strikes targeted weak points in their armor. The once feared strike force faltered, sustaining critical damage. Alien admirals who had doubted Ethan's value could not hide their astonishment. From her vantage point, Zilara felt a surge of pride mixed with amazement. She had assumed her human husband was fragile, limited, and ordinary. Yet now, he was orchestrating victories on a scale that few Virelians could imagine. His calm mind, quick thinking, and fearless approach had become a force in its own right. As night fell over Virelia Prime, the battle finally subsided. The Shadow Nebula Armada retreated, nursing their losses and confusion. Reports from scouts indicated that entire enemy units had been neutralized with minimal Virelian casualties. The Queen's heart swelled with relief, but also with newfound respect. She found Ethan alone in the war room, studying maps and adjusting defensive grids for the next potential attack. She approached quietly. "You were magnificent today," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "I have never seen anyone, human or alien, manage a battle with such precision and calm." "You have changed everything." Ethan looked up, his expression modest. "I did what was necessary. The Armada will return. We must prepare. Strategy alone cannot guarantee victory, but it can give us a chance." Zilara studied him, realizing that her assumptions about humans were entirely flawed. Humanity was not defined by physical strength or technology alone. It was defined by adaptability, intelligence, and courage, the very qualities that had allowed one human to outmaneuver a galaxy-spanning enemy. Over the next cycles, Ethan continued to guide Virelia Prime's defenses. The Shadow Nebula Armada launched more aggressive attacks, testing the Empire with new tactics and unexpected maneuvers. Yet Ethan's calm foresight and creative strategies consistently countered their advances. He coordinated multi-pronged defenses, optimized energy distributions, and predicted enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. The Virelian soldiers began to see him not as a fragile human, but as a leader and strategist, someone whose mind could rival the most seasoned generals. Young recruits looked to him for guidance, engineers sought his advice, and even skeptical officers began to acknowledge his value. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of defense operations, Zilara invited Ethan to the palace gardens. The twin moons cast silver light over alien flora, and the soft glow of the palace illuminated their path. "You have shown me something extraordinary," she said, her voice quiet but intense. "I assumed humans were limited, fragile, weak. But you are different. You see the world in ways we cannot. Your strength is not in your body or your weapons. It is in your mind, your courage, and your ability to adapt." Ethan smiled faintly. "Strength comes in many forms. Humans survive by thinking, by learning, and by never giving up, even when odds are against us. That is what I do. That is what we do." The Queen's expression softened. "I no longer assume you are just a human. I no longer assume that your species is inferior. You have proven that humanity has potential beyond what we ever imagined." The following cycles brought a pause in the enemy's attacks, giving Virelia Prime a moment to recover and regroup. Ethan used this time to train soldiers in adaptive thinking, improvisation, and observation. He shared his human methods with those willing to learn, subtly improving the Empire's resilience without imposing dominance. Zilara observed the changes with fascination. Her empire was growing stronger, not through raw might alone, but through the integration of human ingenuity. And Ethan, her human husband, had become the catalyst for this transformation. But the Queen also knew that the war was far from over. The Shadow Nebula Armada would return, stronger and more determined. Entire fleets could not withstand them without careful planning and extraordinary strategy. And in this challenge, Ethan's role was becoming increasingly central. One night, while reviewing battle simulations, Ethan paused and looked at Zilara. "They will return," he said. "But we will be ready. They underestimate humanity, and that is their mistake. Our strength is not obvious. It is subtle. And when they face it fully, they will realize how wrong they were to dismiss us." Zilara nodded, a mix of awe and respect in her eyes. She realized that she had underestimated not only Ethan, but the potential of an entire species. Humanity was not defined by physical strength or technology. It was defined by intelligence, courage, creativity, and the refusal to yield. The Queen's heart swelled with pride and anticipation. She had married this human without fully understanding him, without knowing the depth of his abilities. Now she understood that he was more than an advisor, more than a diplomat. He was a force, a symbol of what humanity could achieve when underestimated. As the twin moons set, casting light over the city, Zylara knew the truth. The galaxy had not yet seen the full extent of human potential. And when humanity's true might was finally unleashed, it would change the balance of power forever. For now, the Shadow Nebula Armada had been held at bay. But the Queen and her human husband knew that the coming battles would test not only their courage, but the very essence of human ingenuity. And when that moment arrived, Ethan Cade would show the galaxy the true might of humanity, a might that no alien could ignore or underestimate. The battle for Virelia Prime had reached its peak. The Shadow Nebula Armada returned in full force, larger and more ruthless than ever. Their ships darkened the skies, bristling with energy weapons, while massive cruisers moved in perfect formation, like predators closing in on their prey. From the palace observation deck, Queen Zylara stood beside her human husband, Ethan Cade, her eyes scanning the approaching enemy fleet. She had seen him handle small skirmishes, probe attacks, and clever defenses, but this was the ultimate test. The fate of her empire hung in the balance. "Ethan," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the tension, "this is unlike anything we have faced before. Can we truly withstand them?" Ethan's calm gaze met hers. "We can. They rely on predictable patterns and they underestimate us. That is their mistake. We must act decisively and we must act together." The Queen studied him, realizing that she had underestimated him all this time. His quiet demeanor had masked a mind of extraordinary clarity and strategy. Every move he suggested, every plan he devised, revealed the subtle genius of a species she had long dismissed as weak. The palace's command center was a flurry of activity. Alien generals barked orders, engineers adjusted defenses, and soldiers readied their fleets. Ethan moved among them with quiet authority, suggesting strategic adjustments that no Virelian had thought of. Small changes in energy distribution, minor fleet repositioning, and creative use of decoys transformed the defensive lines. "Human," one admiral whispered to a colleague. "How does he see all this? He is everywhere and nowhere at the same time." The colleague shook his head. "It is not about being everywhere. It is about thinking differently. That is something humans do better than anyone." Ethan remained calm, focusing on the holographic battle map in front of him. He noticed the weaknesses in the enemy fleet, gaps in formation, blind spots in energy shields, and patterns that could be predicted with careful observation. Using this knowledge, he coordinated an intricate counter-strategy. "Deploy the interceptor squads in a staggered approach," he instructed. "Activate decoy drones in 2-minute intervals. Shield grids. Focus on the energy spikes from the cruiser's rear sections. Fleet Alpha. Prepare a counter-assault along the nebula corridor." Every instruction was executed with precision. The humans' calm authority inspired confidence, even among the skeptical alien officers. Slowly, the tide of the battle began to shift. The enemy fleet launched a massive energy barrage, intending to breach the city's defenses in a single strike. For a moment, it seemed as though the assault might succeed. Zylara's breath caught in her throat, but then Ethan's adjustments took effect. Shield grids pulsed in perfect synchronization, absorbing the energy blasts without collapse. Interceptor ships darted unpredictably, intercepting key enemy vessels and forcing them into retreat. Decoy drones distracted the armada, drawing their fire away from the city. The Queen watched, her heart pounding, as her human husband orchestrated a defense that seemed almost impossible. Every move he made was precise, every strategy effective, every decision calculated with clarity. It was as if he could see the entire battlefield at once, predicting enemy movements before they occurred. Zylara's respect for him deepened. She realized that she had not merely underestimated him. She had underestimated the entire human species. Humanity's true strength was not in size, weapons, or numbers. It was in intelligence, adaptability, and courage, the ability to persevere against overwhelming odds. Hours passed. The Shadow Nebula Armada pushed relentlessly, but each attack was met with carefully coordinated countermeasures. Ethan's strategies exploited their weaknesses, turning the enemy's strength into vulnerability. Alien generals who had once doubted him could not hide their astonishment. "By the stars," one muttered, "he sees what no Virelian could. He is remarkable." The Queen nodded silently. She felt a deep sense of pride, not only in her husband, but in the species he represented. For centuries, humans had been dismissed as fragile, weak, and insignificant. Yet here was proof that they possessed a power the galaxy had overlooked, the power of ingenuity and unyielding spirit. As the battle reached its climax, Ethan issued his final set of instructions. "Energy pulse in 3, 2, 1, now. Fleet Alpha. Engage from the Nebula Corridor. Interceptors, strike at their cruisers' rear sections. Decoys, draw fire outward." The coordinated attack was devastating. The Shadow Nebula Armada's main fleet faltered, their formation broken. Key cruisers were disabled, while their energy weapons were redirected and neutralized by the precise human-guided defenses. Panic rippled through the enemy ranks. From her vantage point, Zilara watched in awe as her human husband turned the tide of a battle that had seemed hopeless. It was not sheer force that had saved the Empire, but strategy, observation, and courage, all human traits that the aliens had long underestimated. When the final retreat of the Armada was confirmed, the palace erupted in celebration. Soldiers cheered, engineers congratulated one another, and even skeptical generals bowed their heads in respect. The human who had once been considered fragile, ordinary, and insignificant had led them to victory. Zilara approached Ethan, her eyes shining with admiration and relief. "You have done the impossible," she said. "I assumed you were just a human. I assumed your species was limited. But today, you have shown me the truth. Humanity is far stronger than we ever imagined." Ethan shook his head, modest as always. "I did what anyone would do to protect their home. Humans endure, adapt, and persevere. That is all." The Queen smiled. "It is more than all of that. It is brilliance, courage, ingenuity. You have proven that humans are capable of greatness beyond our comprehension, and you, Ethan Cade, are the symbol of that greatness." Word of the battle spread quickly throughout the Empire. Aliens who had once dismissed humans began to reconsider their assumptions. Humanity, they realized, was a force not to be underestimated. Their potential was now clear, thanks to the courage and brilliance of one man. In the weeks that followed, Virelium rebuilt and strengthened its defenses, incorporating strategies inspired by human ingenuity. Ethan trained soldiers in adaptive thinking, engineers in creative problem-solving, and fleet commanders in unconventional tactics. The Empire became more resilient, more flexible, and more capable than ever before. Zilara watched these changes with fascination. Her human husband had not only defended the Empire, but had transformed it. The Queen understood that the galaxy would never again see humanity as weak or ordinary. Humans were clever, courageous, and capable of achieving the impossible. One evening, in the quiet of the palace gardens, Zilara walked beside Ethan. The twin moons cast a soft glow on the alien flora, illuminating their path. "You have changed the course of this empire," she said softly. "And you have changed my perspective on your species. Humans are extraordinary." Ethan smiled faintly. "We do what we must to survive. That is all." The Queen shook her head. "No, it is more than survival. It is brilliance, courage, and perseverance. You have shown me what humans can achieve when underestimated. I will never make that mistake again." As the stars sparkled above, a sense of peace settled over Virelium. The Shadow Nebula Armada had been defeated, at least for now. The Empire was stronger, wiser, and more united than ever, and humanity had proven that it could stand among the greatest powers of the galaxy, not through sheer force, but through ingenuity, adaptability, and courage. Ethan and Zilara stood together, looking out over the city they had protected. For the Queen, the lesson was clear. Strength comes in many forms, and the most unexpected forms can sometimes be the most powerful. The galaxy had seen the rise of a human hero. It had seen the brilliance of ingenuity, the courage of a species long underestimated, and the triumph of strategy over brute force. And for Ethan Cade, the quiet diplomat from Earth, it was only the beginning. The Queen turned to him, her eyes reflecting the twin moons above. "You have shown me the true might of humanity. I cannot wait to see what comes next." Ethan's calm gaze met hers. "Neither can I, and together we will face whatever challenges the galaxy sends our way." The story of Virelia Prime's survival became legend. Humans were no longer considered weak or insignificant. Their potential was recognized, their courage respected, and their ingenuity celebrated. And at the center of it all was one human, who had proven that even in a galaxy of mighty empires and fearsome fleets, the true measure of strength lay in intelligence, adaptability, and the unyielding human spirit. As the twin suns rose over the capital once more, the Queen and her human husband prepared for the future. They knew that the galaxy would continue to test them, but they also knew that with courage, strategy, and the brilliance of humanity, no challenge was insurmountable. The Shadow Nebula Armada had been held at bay, but their defeat marked a turning point. Virelia Prime and its people had learned a vital lesson. Never underestimate humanity, for its true might is often hidden, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. And as the Empire looked to the stars, one truth shone brighter than all others. The human spirit was unstoppable, ingenious, and capable of achieving greatness in ways the galaxy had never imagined. For Queen Zilara, for Ethan Cade, and for all of humanity, the future was limitless.